Hi there, my name is Helena.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are Speaker Insight, where we help speakers, authors, and coaches to build a portfolio business on your terms.
And today we're really grateful for Carolyn Hobdey to join us because she's been in our world for about 18 months and we have been in close contact with her on every stage of the journey. She's been part of Speaker Insight from using our services, a good friend, but also the fact that she's actually made so much progress. We love to document how many of our clients are working to inspire others. So this is a deep dive into Carolyn's world to show you what is possible in 18 months, because she has really lifted the lid with her progress and transformed herself and her businesses in this time. So we would love you to join us for the next few minutes to learn a little bit more about Carolyn, but also what you can do for yourself by working with us in Speaker Insight. So let's go right back, Carolyn, to 18 months and just let people know, how did you come across us? How did you come into our world?
Probably the best way possible, to be honest, because I came across you through referral. Okay. So one of your other clients, recommended you, and yeah, I always think that's the best way to go, isn't it? Because I think particularly as a business owner, those referrals and recommendations are absolutely key, because then it's somebody that you trust. If it comes from somebody that you trust,
it's always great. And just give us a little bit about where you were in your life, in your business. What were you feeling? What was going on? What were your pains, concerns, frustrations, desires? Tell us a little bit about who you were then.
Well, I was still in corporate world at the time. So I was an HR director in a business, but I'd been through a lot in my personal life up until that point, huge amounts of transformation. And I'd got myself a new job and I was left with this really niggly feeling that like something still wasn't quite right. Mm-hmm. And it was really that started me on a journey of thinking something needs to be different here. I'm not sure if I want to do what I'm doing anymore. I think I'd had that realization already, but I wasn't really sure where to go, what to do with it, and how to take sort of everything I had from a personal and professional point of view and turn it into something.
Yeah, all that experience, that actually what you do isn't enough to satisfy you anymore. But then you're like, and what do I do? What are the alternative options that makes me feel like I'm fulfilling my potential?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing for me is I sort of realized that the corporate world wasn't where I wanted to exist, not full time anyway anymore. And as I always put it from an HR point of view, is I kind of got tired of trying to persuade grown-ups how to behave properly. That was kind of where I'd got to. But then I thought, well, then what the hell do I do instead? Because I've been doing that for over 20 years.
Yeah. Go work with animals. That's my answer.
I've been working with animals for 20 plus years.
That was preferable. So what was the very first thing that you actually did with us, and what happened as a result of that?
So my first session was one of the VIP sessions that I had on a one-to-one with Kelly. So that's sort of where it started. And I have to be honest, that day was a complete revelation for me, because I think what I did more than anything else was I sort of got my story out. And I think that's what, Kelly's skill was absolutely, was sort of unpicking that. And I think one of the first questions, Kelly, you asked me was about, well, kind of just tell me the main milestones of your journey. And I think 2 hours later, we'd sort of gone through this. There were a lot of milestones, I think, in my personal and professional journey. So I think
my response was, this is a film.
Yeah, and I still want Netflix to pick it up on the back of the book, but we'll maybe come back to that bit. But I think it was just a huge relief to sort of get it out there and go like, here's my story. What do I do with that?
Yeah.
And I think the ability for somebody who, to be fair, at that point, didn't know me at all, knew me a hell of a lot better after those couple of hours. But, I think having somebody completely impartial who was just interested in trying to string those bits together, I think that was what the massive value was for me. And I think for the first time, I came away from that, I have to say, on such a high, because I think for the first time, I could see that there was a way that I might be able to turn this into a business.
And that's, isn't it? Everyone's got their own story. And sometimes we can't find that golden thread of what's the message, what's the core thing that then you can take with, it's like intellectual property or, you know, coaching stuff, to then be able to get out there in the world. And if I was going to get it out in the world, what would that look like? Because you were really clear with me that actually I don't want to be doing one-to-one coaching. I don't want to be bogged down with this. I want to reach millions of people, but I don't actually want to have that swapping time for money. So, and I think that's really important when people are looking at, you know, they're setting up their business model, that they don't just go, I want to be like everybody else. I have to do it that way. I have to do the cookie cutter approach, because it has to be on your terms. So we have to think, what's the message that means that you've got something valuable to share and you're aligned with that, with your purpose, your passion, and what you want to be in the world. But then you go, how do I productize that in a way that suits me and how I want to work, how much time, investment, all those types of things. You know, the on your terms acronym for us, term stands for time, energy, resources, money, and skills. So every time you think about creating something, you need to think, how does it work on those 5 principles? So it's great that, and, you know, just to watch you take it from this concept and where it is now with your story, which I know we're dangling some seeds.
I was going to say, you're doing a bunch of teasers, right?
I'm really conscious to watch the viewers to see the journey. So you came on a strategy day with me. We mapped out what the potential could be with your story, what your business model could look like. And then what happened next? I know you said you feel inspired and motivated and you were buzzing from that, but what did you actually do as your next step from that day?
I think for me, it was, you know, really just starting to see, okay, how do I do the building blocks actually of a business itself? And I think that's what, you know, led me to do further work with you guys, because it was then saying, okay, so I sort of understand what I want my business to be, but then it became about, well, how do I do that? Because like I said, I'd been in corporate world, you know, a really, really senior level. So I understood about business, but that's a very different thing about how do you set up a business from scratch? So that became then the next thing. I guess it was kind of dual tracked, really. One was, okay, what's the product? What's the story? What's the message? Like, you know, what is it that I want to do? But then equally as important became the, well, how do I do it? And I think it was those two things side by side, really, that I really need to develop. And I think that's kind of where the real power of you guys comes in, because actually it helped me to do both of those things, but in the same place with you guys.
And I think also in that as well, because you know, we are there to help you as business managers and stuff, to support and project manage that development of your business along the way. We're very much around the other people that we work with as well, because we don't teach speakers how to speak, authors how to write, or coaches how to coach. We teach you how to run a business. But we've got all those people in our network. So I think, and just if I got this wrong,
with a few.
Well, it helped build your belief that the business model was possible by talking to the publisher, the app designer, the ghostwriter, all those types of people that we connected you with to start feeling out, is that possible? Because I know there are a few people that we connected you with. Just tell us a little bit about what happened as a result of those few people.
And I think that's the really incredible thing. I think it is that I think you've referred to it before as like your little black book. You know, it was getting me access to that, because again, you know, I'd never thought about, you know, the app and an app developer, or even know where to start. You know, and you know, I'd just be Googling that otherwise. So it exactly like the referral into you, it's the referral out to people that then, if you trust these people, and then they refer you to people that they trust. It was that side. So so then getting into and even I mean, I think I started off, I watched one of your Facebook lives about you know, how to publish, the best way to publish your book. Because by that point I was like, yes, I'm writing a book. So which I hadn't sort of really set out with that plan, but suddenly I think, you know, again, that first day with you, Kelly, made me realize that there was really like a story worth telling.
How was there a story?
Not least because it, like, one book has already turned into like a trilogy. So I think it was that, and I think having that support. So I think, again, you know, understanding the ways in which it was possible to publish, because I had absolutely no idea. I just thought, you know, the world existed of the sort of, you know, the penguins and the, you know, whatever. Probably thought I was in the realms of ladybird books at the time, but it was, you know, so so just that itself, so like watching the Facebook lives, understanding that, then getting the referral on in terms of talking to somebody that could then support me with that process, understanding more about the writing process itself, because again, I was still working at that point when I started writing the book. So again, it was that trade of time and money, and using the ghostwriter in the first instance, just again to like pour all the story out, and get somebody to actually just write it down. And ultimately I went back and I completely like rewrote it in terms of what is printed today, but just getting that story out into some kind of order was huge, rather than just sitting with a blank piece of paper and start. And I think, and again, the technology side of it that I do as well in terms of that development, that's now turned into a subscription platform, which is still in its development. But oh my God, if to see where it is now versus where it was when I started, in this sort of vague concept of something, and now I've got something where all 9 steps of my framework are now digitized and able to be learnt and done online, which again, I didn't anticipate a pandemic when I started doing that.
Why not?
Like, how amazing, because like now it's all digital, and so everything that I've done is like fed into that. So all of my process, so it goes back to your point about knowing what I wanted my business to be, and how I wanted to spend my time. It's just sort of allowed all of that to evolve. So those connections, and then beyond that, in terms of the rest of the community, has been absolutely awesome, because I've just made steps that I just couldn't have made if I was just sitting there by myself thinking, right, okay, so how do I do this? Who do I know?
And I think you're probably one of the quickest people that I saw to write and publish the book with with filament and stuff, like, because you had that support of getting it out there. But also Chris was so excited about your book, with the cover design and what it was going to be called and all those types of things. So you are a true inspiration to show that you had a full-time job while you were doing all this, right? And so you reached out for the support, the guidance, to make sure you were using your time effectively and you were working with others. I think that's really important for people to pick up, that you don't have to do this by yourself.
Yeah, because there's that tipping point as well. There became that tipping point when, of course, I did leave like corporate life, but having the ability to put so many things in place, to think some things through, to get going with the book and all of those things, that then just built my confidence that, okay, right, I can do this. And then, when the opportunity arose, it meant I could, and it's still scary. I'm not going to pretend about that, but the ability to sort of just then step off and think, right, okay, there's already some nuts and bolts in place. And not least, I just go back all the time to, it's that community of people. There are people there, which, if I don't know the answer, sometimes I might not even know the question that I need to ask. There's actually a group of people I can go to and go, I'm kind of thinking like I'm sort of here. And, and there's a community you can go to and get the answers.
And I think one of the key things that you're saying there, so because it's so easy to look back right now and kind of mush it all together. So I'm going to do my best to kind of expand it, because once you've got that confidence of, hang on a minute, my story has value. Hang on a minute, actually there are people to help me. Hang on a minute, there's a community. Hang on, I'm actually learning how to be in this world, and that more might be possible, and it might have that possibility of, I can come out of where I'm at. So I want to invite you to kind of step back into, okay, so you did some, extracted the book ideas, extracted that through the ghostwriter, started talking about publishing and everything else. What was the next thing that you actually did with us, and what happened as a result of that? Because quite a lot happens.
I mean, again, it's kind of stepping through that process, isn't it? But I think then the next thing for me, because like I said, there was those kind of 2 tracks, weren't there, of the kind of what I wanted my business to be about, and then the how of doing it. And so the next thing I did was come on your retreat, which again was sort of like mind-blowing in a really good way, in as much as just taking that time out, because again, I was still working at that point, but I took those days out. And like, first and foremost, I think I properly felt like I'd invested in myself and sort of invested in this idea. I think that was what was so great about it. And God, it paid dividends really, in that I think spending that time, I think you guys stepping through the process of like sort of how to build the business. I mean, there was lots of sort of terminology and language there that it was the first time I'd come across it. So I did feel like I was learning a new language, but I think what you guys did is sort of really break that down and help me to understand that. I sort of came away thinking, oh my God, I've got all these new words and concepts. But I really sort of understood at that point what was going on. And I think that really helped me then as I move forward. But I think that few days itself, I think what was great about it was the mix of people that were in the room. I think that the fact that it was kind of a small group, so you really felt that you got that personal attention and were able to ask the questions that you really needed to ask, but also the blend of people in the room that was, some people who were just like me, who were sort of had an idea and something that they wanted to go, wanted to do. And then other people who were coming back, I know sort of probably their third, fourth, retreat with you. And again, that in itself gives you confidence, doesn't it? Because I'm sitting there thinking, no, I've invested this money, I'm here with these people. My experience so far has been good, but to sit in a room with people who are coming back time after time and clearly still getting value out of it. Right. I think that was sort of huge reassurance again. But I think that stepping through the process and, like I said, that mix of people who were all in different places in their journey, I think, again, that insight, but just the process that you followed. I mean, I literally, I go back to the workbook from that, regularly. I had it out yesterday, things that I wrote for myself, things that you taught us, that it's like, okay, I'm just going to remind myself about this or give my self some confidence about that. I'm still using the tools from it, 18 months on, because it's the fact that it kind of debunked it for me. And I just understood these were the bits that I need to do. And I think that constant referral, because as I've gone on my own journey, that workbook has kind of sort of followed with me on the stages of that journey.
It's wonderful. And what I love hearing about that is that Kelly and I are very keen, as you know, to help people put the foundations in their business. Kelly said earlier, we don't do cookie cutters. We do how to build a speaker, author, coach business that actively works for you. And so those foundations, whether it's the beginnings of the framework, which I know that you've obviously kind of worked on since, but that beginnings of the framework coming into being, the product range that you were actually able to look at and go, hang on a minute. So what can I actually give and sell to the world that actively allows them to benefit and me to benefit, so that there's that holistic piece that goes in there, as well as just starting to get that messaging happening. So I love the part of the journey that says, okay, I've got something, and then you came on the retreat and we started shaping it into the real something. And I love hearing that you're constantly referring to it, because that's one of the reasons that we actually do what we do. We provide you with frameworks and methodologies that allow you to take whatever you're doing and thinking, and wherever you're moving on to, because we're constantly evolving into something else. So it's really heartening to hear that is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, and it's informed what I do as well in my business, because I go back to my subscription platform that I'm still building at the moment and has evolved massively. But the whole essence of that platform is that the tools and techniques in it isn't a one-time only. It's an iterative process that you can go back and keep using, because I think that's what I saw as the value out of it, is that actually I do want tools and techniques that my clients can go back and go, doing something completely different to what you do, but going back with my clients, and they're able to go through that iterative process and keep using those tools and techniques, essentially for the rest of their lives.
Brilliant.
It's about layers, isn't it? I know we were talking about this yesterday, Carolyn, at the Business Boost Day, but it's the fact that, as you grow as an individual, both as a business owner, but your clients, you get to see things that you didn't see before.
Yeah.
There's been books that I've read, like, Think and Grow Rich, and I'm like, that was never in that chapter 2 years ago, and I read that, because you can't conceptualize stuff when you're not there on the journey. It's not relevant for you, so you don't take it in. So it's great that your program is allowing people to go through it once and then potentially again and potentially again with fresh eyes each time, and we're very similar to that. And I know that we've alluded to the fact that you've now quit your job. You've got one book. We'll talk about the trilogy. You were talking about membership sites and your subscription, the online courses. These are all things that became possible when you were at the retreat, because we sort of told you, this is how you create an online course. This is how you do this. These are the steps. These are how you should price it. This is how the marketing for selling it would happen, and the automation and blah, 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 which, as you said, debunks it for people. But actually, if they're not ready yet to launch something, they know it's there, and then they come back to it when they're ready to launch the product, because it's in the workbook or wherever it might be. There's a training on there. So we've been teasing the people watching this. Yeah. We want to know what's going on in your world. Tell us what is now tangible, what's there for people to do for you, and also what do you now do? We know you used to be HR, but what do you do now?
So for me, there's like two halves of my business. So the first one is Mayday. So Mayday is all about helping people to navigate change. And the way I describe it is that I take people from confusion to clarity. So this is about what is the life that I've got versus what is the life that I want. And I help them to unpick and unpack the difference between those two, but do it in, a step-by-step way, so that it's not some huge kind of big bang. It's like I've developed the how-to guide that allows them to then step through, okay, I know there's that kind of niggly feeling. So going back to that same feeling I had of this life, this world, this whatever I'm doing, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, there's that niggle that just something isn't quite right. And it all looks great and sounds great. And you should sort of be, feel hugely grateful for what you've got. But something about it is just leaving you really empty and unfulfilled. So I've got the sort of step-by-step how-to process to help you understand, what is it that needs to change? Why does it need to change? So making that emotional connection with the need to change, and then giving people the tools and the techniques to actually go, okay, here's the plan in terms of that change, and really just taking the fear out of change. So that's
I remember when you were coming up with this, because if people obviously if they don't know you, they might not remember your name is Carolyn Hobdey. So when we were talking about, Mayday is like part of the brand, and obviously if you look at all of your colorings and your branding and stuff, they're very much you. But also this whole call out that's like, let's put this Mayday message out. Let's save you, right? Let's go. There's something wrong. I'm drowning, but we don't know what the problem is. Come and save me. And this is the sort of tool where you're going, I'm not the guru, but I've been there. And we'll talk about this in your personal brand now. You've been there. You've definitely got, I would say worn the t-shirt, but I'm actually going to say worn the life ring, because that's completely. But you're basically saying, learn from me, learn from the resources, and you can do it for yourself too.
Yeah, and it's so possible. I think that's always the message as well, is that it is absolutely possible to do that, and when it happened to me, I'd absolutely, like, my life had completely imploded when it happened to me. And it's kind of that thing of, if I can come out of that like really dark hole and sort of, and change myself in that sense, then, it's absolutely possible for somebody else to do it too.
Yeah.
And then so we had that brand, which is what we started with and what really came when we were working at the retreat. But since then, especially in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, I suppose, the other brand came out. So tell us why you've got two brands and what the second brand is about.
For sure.
So in terms of telling my story, and kind of almost like saying, here are my credentials to be here and do this, I wanted to get my story out. And, the story that I spent time telling Kelly about in that first meeting. So that was when the idea of the book came about, and saying, right, I'm going to write my memoir. I'm going to write absolutely, totally, a completely raw, warts and all.
And it really is.
And truly.
There are no stones left unturned, and I'm sure
no holds
it will
barred.
be a film. It like literally.
It has.
I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. Seriously.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. So it started off as a book, and then it's evolved into a trilogy, which in itself is just incredible. I just thought, I'll write a book and that'll get it sorted, and it's like, no, it's now a trilogy. So I wanted to write my memoir in the first instance, and then sort of how that's evolved is then the memoir focuses on some of my work life, but a lot of my personal life is in the first one. Book 2 is then is about that journey out. So book 1 takes you up to the point of sort of life implosion. Book 2 is then about the journey out, and how my 9-step process came into being, and sort of what I learned in order to make those steps sort of credible and know that those are the things that people needed to do. And then book 3 will be focusing on my corporate career, because there kind of wasn't room for it anywhere else. But there's a lot that goes on.
There's still a lot, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on. And particularly when you're an HR director, there's an awful lot that you see in the corporate world. So I just wanted space to do that. So book 3 is going to be about my working life.
And that's interesting in itself, because that's obviously where that evolving part is, because actually you needed to have two brands and you needed to separate out everything. So it makes perfect sense that actually there's a trilogy, and that the corporate thing sits in the third book, because actually we muddy the waters otherwise. And I think a lot of speakers, authors and coaches do try and kind of shoehorn things in, whereas you've absolutely done what we suggest so much of the time, which is just say what is present and what can we actually do. And for you to have the two makes complete and utter sense, but is also very clear for the avatar or the ideal client that's actually going to be partly for the one business and then for the other business. It just makes for clarity, as you say.
It does. And I think that, so the other half of my business is absolutely about women, and it's about, so that's the Redefining Selfish brand. And that's all designed at, typically, I think it comes a lot from my HR background, where HR looks after everybody else and they don't look after themselves. I think it comes from being a woman, where again, we have that similar trait where we tend to give and care and look after other people, but we don't take that time to look after ourselves. And I guess where the two brands kind of rub up against each other, my saying with the Redefining Selfish bit and helping women to prioritize themselves in their lives is that it rubs up against the Mayday stuff, because I always say that you can only save somebody else if you've already got your own life vest on. You can't rescue anybody if you're already drowning. So that's where the two things sort of come together. But with the female side, I tend to sort of talk of it about like from guilt to great. It's really about trying to get women to understand that guilt they have about caring for themselves actually is completely misplaced. And actually, if we look at what selfish means and actually start doing that self-care, prioritizing you, it puts you in the best place possible to then go out and care for other people. But if you're absolutely at the thin end of the wedge in your own life, in your own health, in your own mental health, you can't help anybody in a really productive way.
No. And I think it's also important, because going back to that first day and looking at your business model, speaking was something that was like on your radar too. You want to be a speaker, and you had done a HR speaking gig when we first met, and I know things have come up. Well, let's talk a little bit about PR and stuff. You've done quite a lot of PR, but just to redefine what Helena was saying about the two brands and not shoehorning stuff.
Yeah,
your personal brand, you'll never exit. Right? Because that's you as a speaker, that's you as an author, and that's you really relating predominantly to women. So when you're writing copy and you're writing under your personal brand, you are aiming it at women, because the way you're writing that book, there are things that will really resonate from a language and a scenario perspective only to women. The Mayday brand, some of those women will also come over to this world, but also this opens it up, because your language and your pain points and what you're giving people are for all genders, right? It doesn't matter who you are. It's actually the unifying thing is what the process is, that they're feeling empty, unfulfilled, not feeling guilty about going, my life is really good, so why am I not happy, that type of thing. So for you, this could be an exitable business. It could be something that is sold. You've created IP, you've created training, somebody else could come in and pick that up, and all the methodology, all the stuff you've created is asset worthy, and you could sell that. So that allows you the option, right? We don't always say to people this is the right thing to do for everybody,
for sure, but
it really worked for you. So it'd be really nice to see, because people are going to laugh at your book stuff. Give us, if you've got your book there, give us a glimpse, but also tell us about, you were one of the people that we worked with who launched their book in lockdown, which is always an interesting thing, but you've had great success from just this first book launch. So show us it, tell us all about it, tell us about your PR.
Yeah, so my book, I guess the title of my book came about by accident, but it came about from something that I said when somebody said, well, tell us. So it's just explain in a nutshell, like what your book is about. And I thought like, this is like a funny story, because this is what my book is about. And they just went, oh my God, that has to be the title of it. So my book is called All the Twats I Met Along the Way. So it's the first of my Twats trilogy. So book 2 is called De-Twat Your Life, which is the journey out from that dark place. And book 3 is called Twats at Work. So that's all about the corporate world. But I think...
And it makes people laugh, because we've all had twats in our life, but I can't emphasize the depth of the severity, adversity, real serious topics in this book.
Yeah.
From everything from narcissism to abuse to blah, blah, blah. But the tone that you do it allows people to read it, and it's not trauma inducing as such, but it's not taking it taking it lightly.
No.
But the way you describe it and the way you write it makes it applicable and raises awareness of people when they actually really go on the journey with you. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think I have to say, I mean, there's been a few amazing things that have been said about the book. Themes that keep coming back. One is how people can't put it down. And I've had people say to me, my kids haven't eaten properly for 2 days because I've just given them ready meals. Which I absolutely loved from someone else who was like, I fell asleep on it like at 3 o'clock in the morning and then woke again a couple of hours later and kept going. So that's been really lovely stuff. I think the other thing that I've been hugely appreciative of actually is I have had a number of men that have read it, because I think, again, it's about saying it isn't just about a female audience. I've had a number of men that have read it and got in touch and said, like, men need to read this book because they need to understand sort of what women go through and what we can do to help them, but also what we do to them in terms of our behavior. So that's been also fantastic. But yeah, I think so much of what I get is people go, oh my word, and I've got this story. And in fact, I met somebody only on the weekend who I'd never met before in my life, was a friend of a friend. That friend recommended the book. And I met this lady and we just talked nonstop for an hour, because the relatability of all the bits of the story, I think, is the bit that really makes it accessible for people. So, and it goes back to your point of, yes, I want to get my business to such a point where I can sell Mayday and then I can go off and star in the Netflix production, of the making of the book. But it's, I think that's the thing that's great. And I think the thing I'm so grateful for is the amount of opportunities and sort of, albeit that mostly virtual, not entirely, but stages that I've been able to stand on and talk about, but can talk about the issues that come out of the book, because that's the really key thing. It's the issues that it raises and those themes that I really want to talk to people about. And
that gives you that beautiful platform for, not that you necessarily set out to do this, because it probably wasn't when you were thinking very originally that you could actually go out and change how the world is thinking at that really big level, which I know is now where you're at. You've allowed yourself and given yourself permission more and more and more as you see what's possible by structuring the business in the way that you have, by putting the 2 brands in place, by actively really stepping back and thinking, actually, I can do this. Suddenly it's possible. As you say, through a film, you touch millions of people anyway, but the things that sit behind that allow you to become someone who speaks on stages, who actively does some good in the world. And of course, that's a brilliant place to be in, and part of the successes that you've been making.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's, again, I'm such a believer, like we say, it just evolves and moves. And it's like with the Mayday logo itself, the first A in Mayday is a light shining down. So that's shining the torch on, for me, particularly with the book, the darker areas of how we speak to ourselves, of others' behavior in life, the experiences we have, really shining a light on that and going, guys, we need to stop being ashamed of this. That's what my book was all about. Let's remove the shame. Let's remove the embarrassment, because actually I'm just going to stand up there, pretty kind of damn naked really, and go, this is what happened to me and this is who I am. So the first A in Mayday is that kind of shining the light down. The Y in Mayday at the end is the beacon of light. So this is like the hope, the beacon of light. And it's absolutely, because what I did for years, the theme in my book is my own self-worth, or lack of it, meant that I dimmed my light to please other people sort of for decades, both professionally and personally at times. So that beacon of light at the end is about going, no, hell no, we're actually going to turn up the wattage on that light and really, really let it shine. And that's sort of what that logo is about. And that's really what the book is about. And certainly the next ones in the trilogy is about, right, let's just let that happen, be who we are and be shameless really about that.
And really, you are a beautiful leading role model of absolutely shining that light and really growing it bigger in that way, right?
And do you think that it's those key messages that you're talking about here that got the PR attention? Because, since the book, part of your book launch, you were literally on daytime television, you were on radio, you were in like mainstream newspapers, you were literally everywhere. What was it that you think really enabled you? Because most people don't get that type of attention for book one. I'm going to set expectations.
Absolutely. That's not normal necessarily.
What helped you get that media exposure, do you think?
I think it's being really clear about what the story is. And I think being really clear about what those themes are. Obviously, I worked with a PR company who did a fantastic job of taking all of those parts and really understanding me. I think that was the really key bit. I had to understand myself, and the book itself was that sort of journey of discovery. But I think, working with partners who really get you, and, it's like you guys exemplify, it's that really caring. My PR people have never made me feel like I'm just, kind of a tool for them to use. They really care about me. It's a small team that I work with, but I think it's great for that as well. It's a small team of people, but they've all got to know me. They all really cared. It's that attention to detail, I think, that was really important. And they got to know me. And therefore, when the inquiries were coming in from them, immediately they were like, we think this is one that's for you, because they knew me.
And they knew why. They had it wasn't just a PR press release that they were reading from. They knew the detail. I mean, I knew your PR lady, and she read the book and she'd like bookmark bits for herself, and so she actually could pick out bits of the story to go, this is relevant for what you want on that show, etc.
And did that brilliantly. And I think that's the thing. I think it's been about really clear about what the story is, what the messages are, and going back to sort of Helena's point as well, I've got so much story that sometimes it's like, well, that could be overwhelming and the message used. So I think as well, being really clear about what are the different themes in that story, and being targeted about going after the things in relation to those themes, rather than we've got this woman with this entire book. It's about, actually, we've got somebody who can come and speak about, abuse, who can come and speak about, toxic relationships and narcissism, who can come and talk about, the corporate world and what it's like to be, a woman in that world in particular. So it's being really clear about what those threads of the message are, and then going after those.
Brilliant.
For sure. So to kind of wrap it up, because I know that you've got a lot of things in place that have helped you to create that success. Can you tell us how you believe that we've actually helped you, and how we're going to continue to help you as a Changemaker Central member? I absolutely, I honestly believe I wouldn't be here doing this today if it wasn't for you guys. I absolutely don't think I would, because I just think I'd be floundering around. I don't think I'd have built up the courage to do it, because I think what you helped me to do, like I said, is just to make the steps visible. And I think you kind of, I used to use this analogy a lot in my HR world, is that sometimes you have to kind of show people the picture on the jigsaw box and then unpick it and go, right, but first we're going to just build like the corner of the jigsaw.
Do the blue sky.
It's like, overall, and then, but actually let's like not make that scary. You can now see where you're going, but actually let's now like go and let's just build a little bit of it, and then we'll add to that, and we'll build another bit, and like make the connections and sort of gradually build a picture. And I think that's what you did so clearly for me, and are still doing for me. And that's why it'll continue to happen, because my business is still evolving. My thoughts are still evolving. The products that I want to develop is still evolving. So I think it's about just helping me to build that jigsaw picture. And even for me, when it's built, I don't think it will be done in that sense, because I think the world moves on, and what the world needs and what we want to produce will change. But I think that constant community of support, I think the thing I was most worried about when I left corporate world is that, like, if I worked by myself, I'd feel alone and isolated. And I think the one thing that you guys have helped me to do is build that community where actually I feel completely the opposite of isolated. I felt more isolated in the corporate world, particularly the more senior I became, particularly working in HR when there's very few people you can kind of confide in yourself. I feel the opposite of isolated now, because I feel like really part of something. And even obviously when I've, sold my business and I've sold the rights to Netflix for, 20 seasons, that makes Friends looks like a, advertisement. then, you know, when all of that's happened, you know, I think I'm still going to be there going, right, well, here's the next thing, and here's the group. And also, you know, it gives you a place where you can give back as well. You know, it's not just about taking in your community. It's about giving back as well. You know, I hope that there's times when I, you know, respond as well to people and go, oh, talk to this person, or I can help with that, or, you know, because it gives you that feeling. So, you know, it's just, yeah, I just want to be part of it. And it's probably a real cliche to say it's like a family, but it is like a family, although I think it's like without the arguments. So it's kind of a
chosen family, right? The chosen family.
Yeah, chosen family, yeah. Not that weird uncle that turns up at Christmas.
No, that's me, don't worry. Yeah. But we saw that, as I say, like in Changemaker Central, the membership, we have those business boost days where, like you were on yesterday, where we all work together. And I know you made some great new connections just yesterday with some of the people that connected with your story, or it might just be that touch base on our Ask Us Anything Monday sessions where you just come in with that niggling question, or all the training that I know, you know, as your layers develop and you're now going, okay, so what do I do next? Maybe I know we've spoken to you about Facebook ads and stuff. And when it's at that level, then how do I do that? And so our businesses, including your businesses and everyone's business watching, always are evolving. And it's having that group of people where you're not relying on one person's expertise to solve it all. Yeah. You're in it together, you're learning vicariously through each other, and you've got the experts there to hold your hand along the way. So and that's one of the things why Changemaker Central is so important for people that have done the retreat or things, because it's about the ongoing support and knowing that we've got your back. So my question is, are you going to play yourself, or somebody else is going to play you in the film? Because that's something we need to get this sorted, right?
No, see, one of the things that happens with my group of friends, because like they were part of the reason like I wrote a book, they're always like, you need to write a book about this. But some of my friends sit around and have that conversation about like who would play them in the movie of my life.
That's great.
So which is great, isn't it? You know, that's how brought into it they are. So will I play myself? No, definitely not. Because like, let's face it, like if somebody's going to make a film or a Netflix series about you, you're going to choose somebody like really hot and good looking to play you, aren't you? You're going to go all out there. So no, I'm not going to play myself. I've got various ideas. I think the younger me, I think Emma Stone.
Oh yeah.
Very good.
The more mature me, although somebody said that like in the nicest possible way she's possibly a bit too old, but I think because of the hair and because of the laugh, Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But Julia Roberts' age is she's ageless.
Yeah.
She's still the same when she's like 90. So.
Yeah, I just think she's great. I just love her. And yeah, it's the laugh, I think. But I think that's what she'll just be able to do really well.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that we thought about that, because that's a really important question.
It's vital. Yeah. I have to say, what I really like is that many people are visioning this, so it can't help but come into
it's going to grow. It's going to grow.
Really great. You're just throwing a whole bunch of energy at it. It's great.
Yeah, I'm already like preparing my face for the awards ceremonies.
For sure. But surely you've got your speech written by now, right?
Totally.
That's great.
Well, we look forward to being at that awards ceremony with you. I'm sure we'll be out of lockdown by then. But yeah, I know that we're so grateful to have you in our world, and for being such a great demonstration and an inspiration to all the people watching of what is possible in just 18 months worth of, you know, and juggling work and everything else at the same time. When you have that clarity, support, that burning desire to get your message out there in the world, and you just take action. That's what you are a great example of, is one of the action takers out there. So we really are grateful for you sharing your story, your progress with us and our members. And I'm sure lots of people want to connect, and we will put links to your sites and stuff so that they can go check out your books, and we'll be waiting with bated breath for the film.